Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, wife, a devoted fan of a radio host, wins a contest and develops a relationship with the host. She decides to leave her husband for him but soon realizes the host only saw her as a fling. She returns to her husband, but he refuses to take her back, leading to a public confrontation with her family's support. She then spirals into harassment and stalking of the radio host, leading to legal trouble. Her subsequent relationships are unsuccessful, and she gains a bad reputation. Now let's get into the story. While my wife, 30, was on the way to work one day, she was listening to her favorite radio show. We both listened to it, and I, 28, was on the way to work as well. So I heard her when she was the 9th caller and winner in a contest. She made sure to mention that she was a huge fan of the radio host. And even if I didn't know her at all, I'd say she was smitten with him. Of course I was a little angry, but I didn't bring it up with her because I thought I might be overreacting. She could have just been excited. She won the contest. Of course. As her husband, I assumed she was taking me with her to the concert she won tickets to, so I was excited too. She let me keep thinking that. But in the weeks leading up to the concert, she was actually texting and visiting with the radio host, forming a relationship. One day when I thought she was at work, she was actually at the radio station for a tour and time spent one-on-one with AP. They got time completely alone in the lounge. And that's when my wife sacrificed the sanctity of our marriage. She didn't care about me. I know all this because the day before the concert she told me what happened. She said she was leaving me for him and taking him to the concert with her. I told her fine, I didn't want to continue our 3-year marriage anyway, knowing she slept with someone else. But she needed to get all her stuff out of my house right away. She refused and told me she would do it. After the concert, it really started to sink in that she was giving up our marriage for this guy. And I couldn't help but think that AP didn't know how serious she was about him. It was happening so fast. I told myself I wouldn't have time to be upset before AP dumped her. But that didn't mean I would take her back while she was gone. I threw all her stuff out and actually put about a quarter of it into a bonfire. When she came back the next day, it wasn't to pick up her stuff, it was to try to patch things up with me. She told me she regretted what she did and needed me to forgive her. I convinced her to tell me what was really going on. Which was that AP went back to his usual life and didn't expect to have her as his girlfriend. She assumed they were starting a relationship because he slept with her, but he only saw her as a few night stand and free concert date that he stopped talking to her completely. I think she expected pity from me and a second chance, but I just laughed in her face. I told her she messed up quite obviously, and she'd better think of a way to get all her stuff off my property or I'd start using it for fire fuel. She thought I was the one being ridiculous, believe it or not. So I called over her parents and her brother, even though she didn't want them to know what she did. I told them everything, then asked them who they thought was more justified. They all sided with me. My wife couldn't believe her brother didn't think she should be forgiven. I laughed and laughed, but I think it was part hysteria. Her family mentioned that they had no interest in speaking to her for the time being. I then found out that she started harassing the radio host. Then she found out where he lived. She was arrested, and he got a restraining order against her. I think she was losing it because she realized she gave up our marriage for this guy and all he did was use her. I think that's pretty good karmic effect right there. She left me like I was worthless and I meant nothing that he gave her up the same way. My wife continued having pointless relationships like that for years to come. After she married me, she couldn't find a second chance at marriage, no matter how bad she wanted it. I was glad. It seemed like men were somehow sensing she was bad news. It turns out there's a reason for it. The radio host talked about her and told anyone who listened to avoid her. She became almost like a Karen-type celebrity, known for being someone you wouldn't want to get close to. I knew I deserved a better wife and spouse than that. Today's second story. In this story, details a turbulent marriage marked by financial setbacks and his health issues, exacerbated by a severe bout of COVID-19. After seeking help for emotional struggles and recognizing their past selfishness, his wife engages in a physical affair with a charming athlete. Despite the wife's remorse and efforts to rebuild trust, he remains conflicted about the marriage's future. The financial consequences of divorce, along with the state's no-fault system, complicate their decision. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I have endured a lot over the course of our marriage, most of which are things that were beyond our control. I have a successful career, but our earnings were taken from us by thieves twice in 5 years. And I have an immune disorder that gets me sick at the drop of a hat. So of course, when COVID came around, I almost died from it and spent over a year recovering from very bad symptoms that kept me in bed most days. Luckily, my career allowed me to work remotely from my bed. But I can't say I did my job well, as COVID brain fog is a thing. Fast forward to April 2021. Ailment, brain fog, and financial difficulties all culminated in me recognizing I reached the point of emotional hopelessness. While not suicidal, I knew I needed professional help in a major way. So I voluntarily checked myself into a behavioral hospital for a few days. While the hospital itself was only marginally helpful, one therapist helped me to realize that my long-term ailments made me unintentionally selfish due to prolonged depression. I ugly cried when I had this epiphany as I realized what harm I brought to my wife's emotional well-being and to our marriage in general. I was new man almost overnight. In some respects, I was still quite emotionally fragile and recognized I had a long way to go to repair myself and regain my wife's confidence in me. I emerged from the hospital and my wife picked me up. She immediately noticed the 180 and said, "Wow, I have my husband back." I told her my COVID symptoms continued to abate and even my libido and desire for emotional and physical intimacy for her was also returning, and looked forward to embracing us fully, and my wife was incredibly happy for me. Unfortunately, fate stepped in. 4 days later, as she sat at a cafe outdoors, a younger, fit, healthy, and charming athlete decided to strike up a conversation with her. My wife is, in a word, hot. I mean, I know I show bias because she's my wife, but she looks amazing. She is tall and very well proportioned and her face is beautiful. The gentleman in question was a foreigner and a charmer. He was a bona fide sponsored professional in his sport and well known in his country. He visited our city to train for a few weeks. When she came home, she could not shut up about the guy, but I thought nothing of it. Crushes happen and I am not the jealous type. The day after was the beginning of the bad times ahead. She didn't tell me they exchanged contact information and they met up. She came home from her daily dog walk beaming. I knew immediately she met him. She tried to deny it, but she knows I am very astute when it comes to reading people in general. She pretty much told me that she was going to have this non-emotional, purely physical thing and said intimacy would not likely happen. As I was 5 days out of the mental hospital, I was in no position to fight her on this, either mentally or physically. As with the latter, I was still weak from fighting 14 months of COVID, even though the vaccine continued to allow me to steadily, every day. With the lack of intimacy on my end due to being sick for so long, and considering he was only in town for another week before he returned to his home country, she was absolutely determined to have this affair. Because I lacked the means to fight her effectively, she viewed it as approval from me. Which it was not. I essentially told her that she should let me track her phone at all times for her safety. She would let me know if they were intimate. She promised, but she lied on both counts, of course. Furthermore, she told me that while he was in town, I could not hug her, touch her, kiss her, or make any intimate overtures towards her. I told her that I was afraid she was lying to me and that she was falling for him. I asked her to promise me I was not losing her. Remember, I was fresh out of a mental hospital due to hopelessness, and she said she could not promise that to me. She took him to our favorite restaurant, a very romantic place. They made love in a park that night, even though she told me they had only kissed the next morning. She grew livid when I asked her again how far they went. Adults don't go into a closed park at night to kiss, and insisted I was being paranoid. She checked herself into the swankiest hotel in our city because she needed time to herself and tried to convince me that she was not doing so in order to see him. She stayed for 2 nights. At the end of the second night, he showed up. She had the nerve to text me that he came to the hotel and that they had mediocre intimacy. Then he left. She met him one final time the next morning at a cafe. As he was leaving the next day, she decided to go all out and proclaim she had fallen for him. Here's where it gets funny and sad. The man was a player in every sense of the word. He was shagging multiple women while in town, trying to juggle them all, including my wife. At no time did he reciprocate any word of affection or emotional attraction to my spouse. He was a 100% pure alpha male player. Treated her horribly. Spent most of their time together talking about himself, his training, and even that. He went to a strip joint with members of a professional NFL team, which pissed her off. But also made him even more attractive to her, of course. So she came home fully expecting me to light her up, and I did. She said she did it, it's over. She had no emotional feelings for him and said it was my decision as to whether or not I wanted to stay with her afterward. She said she did it as a means to regain her self-confidence, something I tried to do for years before I got sick, to no avail. I'm a pretty smart cookie and really, really good from a technical perspective. I knew from the outset she would lie, omit, and follow the cheating wife's playbook, and did it to the letter, including gaslighting me on a number of occasions. Let's say that I had the means to listen in on their conversations in real time and recorded it. She knew I had the capability, but she chose to blatantly disregard it and pressed on with the affair. Of course. She even offered to let me go and screw someone to make me feel better if that's what I wanted to do. So stupid. So typical of a response. Every lie she told, I called her out on. I presented the evidence. She was devastated when she knew she was fully caught. I had just about everything. Of course, she tried the I can't remember crap. She tried to downplay their sexual encounters. I knew about both. I knew she told him she fell for him, as again I was able to listen in real time and record the same. I gave her the transcripts. So where are we now? Now she is aware of how much she hurt me. She's doing everything and anything to make it right. But there is nothing she can do to regain my trust, and she knows that as well. She says she is willing to take my anger and my indifference for the rest of our lives if it means that I may see through her actions that she is more than sorry for what she did to me. I think she is truly remorseful. She admits that if he stayed in town longer, she would have continued to see him, knowing full well that it would have completely ruined any chance we had to reconcile. She's blocked him. I have access to all of her devices. I know where she goes at all times. She says she will let me do this until the end of time. What she doesn't understand is that she has forever changed me. I was never a jealous man. I am not an alpha, I never tried to be. But I am confident in who I am as a man, and I've never had problems with the ladies. I've had 100 opportunities to stray due to women's advances towards me, and I never considered infidelity the first time it happens to her. She was a bit heavy prior to how she looks now. She lets herself get shagged, and all because he was so good looking and fit and confident. He played her like a fiddle. Why am I not filing for divorce immediately? Because prior to her idiotic endeavor into wayward wifeville, she'd been over backwards. When I had COVID for 14 months, she kept me on this planet. To say what she did was over and above. To keep me on Earth would be an understatement. I know she loves me. I know why she betrayed me. She tried to blame it on stress and lack of confidence, but in truth, it was simply because a guy like that for the first time in her life wanted to screw her. And he said all the right things about her looks. He got her to say sexual things she would never otherwise say. She has admitted to everyone from her friends to her parents what she did, and that she will spend the rest of her life trying to make it up to me. And she knows I don't trust her and may still decide to leave her. Right now it's 50-50 about whether I will call it quits. I have a lawyer. I have papers written up and ready to be delivered if she messes up even once with me. Update. Here's some more info on her affair partner. The guy is on his way out as a pro sports guy. As he's in his late 30s, he still competes and travels internationally with his country's Olympic team. He has a side gig where he uses his charm and his story about his accomplishments to woo beautiful, sophisticated, wealthy married women to get into the sack with him. As I am a cybersecurity guy with an additional talent for looking into anyone's life as I see fit. Found out very quickly that he owns an intimacy site along with his brother. He clandestinely records women he conquers, whether in their own homes, hotel rooms, etc. His MO is that he wants to listen to music from his smartphone when in actuality, he's using it to record videos. Update number 2. There are some more things I need to clarify. While I don't want to do the homework, for those of you who say COVID doesn't last for 14 months or the vaccine doesn't cure COVID, you're right on both accounts to a point. There exists a group of people, roughly 20% of those who contract COVID-19 and are symptomatic, who experience one or more moderate to severe symptoms beyond 60 to 90 days. Many of us who contracted the virus early in mid-2020 seem to experience the long hauler symptoms that last well over a year. Look it up. As for the vaccine curing me, you're right. It didn't. Also, I see that some of you are calling me a simp for staying with her. I am a Sigma male. I am confident, charming, good-looking when not sick, intelligent, and exude self-confidence. I suppose it's a difficult thing for those who don't suffer long-term ailment, especially an ailment that completely takes away one's libido for over a year, to process that I had no desire and I was impotent due to COVID and occasionally due to my immune system prior to COVID-19, which affected our relationship for certain. That does not make me a simp. I have seen what women will do when they are infatuated and have the opportunity to cheat. They will do just that. And my wife was no exception. Of course, I told her no. Of course, I told her what kind of a person she was: shallow, narcissistic, etc. For what she was determined to do. She initially denied anything was going on, but I knew better and called her out. But my body and spirit were weak. I was like, fine, you want to do this and potentially wreck us? At least let me know where you are at all times, because you don't know this man. Yes, I know he is famous in his country and he has an image to protect. But please don't be intimate with him. If you decide to go that route, wear protection for yourself. I don't plan on having any intimate relations with you should you go that route. Just so you know. Of course, she agreed to all terms and broke every rule because she was being a typical defiant female cheater and I was an impediment to her desire to have the affair. Also, I have divorce papers ready for my lawyer to pull the trigger. But there are some issues. My state is no fault, so her infidelity and my evidence concerning it means nothing. She doesn't work. I have always made excellent money so that she can be the artist and socialite she wanted to be. She's highly educated, very intelligent, and very talented, artistically, and she spends most of her time volunteering for many worthy causes for others less fortunate. But what that means for me is that should I divorce her, I'd likely have to pay alimony in an amount equivalent to her lifestyle. Our current financial difficulties stem only from identity theft, because as a cybersecurity guy, I pissed off a few hackers who were well-funded and represented other countries. I still make good money. We are crawling out of the hole. But I'll be damned if I divorce her right now, as she'll be the one who benefits, and I'll still be okay and have a decent living wage. But paying her alimony after she screwed me over this hard, all because the state doesn't care about infidelity. This is reason number 2 why I haven't pulled the trigger.